Decoder.
हमें स्वस्थ रखने वाली सारी चीजें ज्यादातर शुद्ध होनी चाहिए। सूर्य की किरणें और स्वच्छ पानी। वैसा ही है लाइन अरेबियन डेट्स और अब लाइन लाइना डेट्स। इसमें फाइबर्स और विटामिन भी कुदरती हैं, जो देता है स्वास्थ्य भी कुदरती।
लाइन लाइना प्रीमियम डेट्स।
At Tata Motors commercial vehicles, truck cabin safety begins at the design stage. We design cabins that preserve driver survival space and meet the gold standard of truck cabin safety, ECE R29.03. But we didn't stop at simulations. We tested for reality. This is real safety, delivered at the moment of impact. Tata Motors commercial vehicles, designing, testing and leading the future of trucking with safety at its core.
Amid the noise of war, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you a very important voice. If you have been tracking the war in West Asia, especially on social media, one name stands out: Shanaka Anslem Perera. An independent analyst, Perera has gained a global following for his sharp, incisive breakdowns of a conflict that's not just redefining the world order but has engulfed the world. Cutting through the noise, he decodes strategy, power shifts, and the far-reaching consequences of a war, fact by fact. He is also the author of The Ascent Begins, where he explores the changing world order, economic disruption, and the future of nation states. He joins me live from Melbourne. Thank you so much, Mr. Perera, for making time for News9.
Hi, how are you? Yes, hi. Good evening. Yes, it's
You
my
know,
pleasure.
your tweets are hit, in India. But let me begin by asking you, when do you think this war is ending? What are the expected timeline? The reports are really very, very conflicting.
Yes. I mean, there's no steadfast answer, Kartik. I mean, my honest answer is that if you look at the whole scenario, the whole architecture of this whole conflict has created two possible pathways, the way I see. And if you look at what's happening, the fork comes on April 6th, which is the date President Donald Trump has set for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face strikes on its remaining energy infrastructure. So the United States, they sent, if you can remember, they sent a 15-point peace plan through Pakistan, but Iran rejected it, and they called it extremely maximalist and unreasonable. And Iran also issued their own 5-point counterproposal through their press TV, demanding a halt to all the assassinations on their IRGC officials, reparations, and they wanted guarantees against any future attacks, and they also want full sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. So these positions, if you look at the US demands and Iran's demands, they are nowhere near any convergence. So Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas, he stated explicitly, to quote him, "No negotiations have happened with the enemy and we do not plan on any." So he said that. And at the same time, meanwhile, President Trump's, he claims talks are going well, extremely well. Talks are happening. Yesterday, President Trump, he said he sees a deal could be soon, and he said he claims Iran agreed to send 20 oil tankers through Strait of Hormuz on Monday as a sign of respect to United States and respect to him. But at the same time, as a response, Iran's parliament speaker, Ghalibaf, he said it's all fake news. And here's the honest timeline. If you look at the prediction markets, there's a prediction market called Polymarket, which is one of the biggest betting sites. And they have now processed over around $46 million in bets on the question of US forces entering Iran alone. Is Iran seeking a ceasefire? Or are they trying to teach America a lesson? We don't know, but the evidence says both simultaneously at the same time.
How do you see things differently from others? You're putting in a lot of things together, from medicine to pharmaceutical to rubber. Is there a different system of thought or analysis you deploy in your social media postings? How do you do that?
So basically, what I do is if you look at what's happening around the world, it could be anything. Like what I do is, I look at the whole macro, bigger picture. It's not just LNG gas, it's not just LNG crisis. It could be linked to so many aspects. So what many analysts who are intellectually brilliant, they should be actually looking at many other domains which are connected seamlessly. So that's what I try to do in my best efforts.
Okay, are global analysts missing the big picture right now? Because if you look at the comments that are coming from United States of America, they're pretty contradictory. If you look into the comments that have come from Tehran, also contradictory. If you look at comments that have come from Tel Aviv, they're also very contradictory. There are a lot of double messaging that is happening.
Yes, I think it's the ambiguity. I think, President Trump purposely, I think it's a part of military strategy. Iran says that they are not doing any negotiations, but at the same time, they have their back channels, and US, they do the same thing. I think confusion is a part of military strategy because, if you look at a lot of media conferences, during the past few days, a journalist asked President Trump direct questions, about, certain questions, whether, certain things are going to happen. So President Trump openly said, I'm not going to tell you if they're going to do it. So, so if you look at President Trump's statements, they contradict each other because President Trump might say something in the morning and he might say something in the evening or the following day which is contradictory. So the whole point of ambiguity is having the optionality. So both parties, they do it if you really see.
So what does this tell us about Donald Trump if you look at the narrative of the Iran war?
Yes, so President Trump is operating on multiple levels. If I look at how President So it's his negotiating style in business. So he if you look at it, he threatens to destroy Iran entirely, while at the same time extending deadlines. He claims negotiations are going well, while Iran denies any talks exist. He says he wants to take the oil, while his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he says ground troops are unnecessary. At the same time, if you look at ground troops are getting near to the theater. So what the market data tells us is interesting. Trump's Truth Social posts have repeatedly moved oil futures by billions of dollars within minutes. And this whole strategic picture suggests President Trump is using the war to create multiple leverage points simultaneously. If you look at this, so this whole Iran crisis has given the US extraordinary negotiating power on European trade, energy, and defense policy as well.
Absolutely. But bringing our conversation to the issue of Iran, is there something special about the Iranian resilience? Can we say that Iran has learned the ability to operate without a supreme leader in crises like these? And how do you describe this Mosaic doctrine, which people have been talking about?
Yeah. So this whole Mosaic doctrine, it's very interesting, it was, so it's very genuinely important and underappreciated. What we have to do is, understand how this operates. So Iran, if you look at, they have sustained thousands and thousands of airstrikes across more than 9,000 targets, according to White House data. And the supreme leader was killed in the opening wave, and even the new supreme leader, Mojtaba, he's nowhere publicly to be seen. But still, if you look at, they lost their IRGC Navy commander, Tansgiri, on March 26th. They also lost their IRGC Tehran security commander, Hassanzadeh, this weekend. And yet, they seamlessly continue to effectively restrict or close and ensure that certain vessels pass, but certain vessels do not pass in the Strait of Hormuz. And at the same time, they keep on attacking Gulf nations and they keep on attacking Israel and yes. So and recently, keep that. So Mosaic doctrine. So Iran designed this military structure precisely for this scenario. So instead of a centralized command hierarchy that collapses when you remove the head, or the top hierarchy. So Iran, there's a commander called Jafari. So he built a distributed, decentralized fully autonomous system where individual IRGC commands or individual cells and proxy organizations, they can operate independently where they have pre-delegated authority. So think of it as a decentralized network, not as a hierarchy. So the loss of their supreme leader.
But Shanaka, despite the fact that, this entire apparatus is decentralized, they have been able to take down their $1 billion radar. They have been able to take down E3 Sentry. How have they been able to do that? I mean to say that taking down the most precious American assets.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So what happens is they have the military tech and they have the Mosaic doctrine. So these IRGC doctrines, they have pre-designated commands, and if you look at, for example, the E3 the Sentry early warning aircraft, which was destroyed. So that's a very, very, very genuinely significant military development on March 27th. So what happened was a ballistic missile and a drone attack on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. So it destroyed the E3 Sentry. So what happened was, if you look at Zelensky, President Zelensky's statement, President Zelensky a few days ago in Middle East, he said Russia gave the intel. This is not verified. This was publicly stated by Zelensky on media. So he said Russia gave the intel, and there is some media organizations reporting that Iran is using Chinese tech on their ballistic missiles for guidance, precision guidance, and trajectory to hit everything. And so, and there's something called Beidou satellite navigation systems, which China is supplying.
The world, apart from the war, Shanaka, is also worried on the issue of global energy order. The world is also very worried on the issue of LNG, LPG, the shortages. How badly will this destroy our energy equilibrium? And do you have any idea of the LNG normalization timelines?
I think, it's going to take at least, 18 to 24 months minimum, because it's a structural damage and it's very deep.
Can we broad base our conversation into, you have written about it, number of industries that are getting affected. People generally, Shanaka, think in terms of gas and oil or the crude. But what about the other products that are getting affected? I was reading an NYT article, the helium is getting expensive, maybe your tracksuits can get expensive. There's so many other stuff that can get expensive because they are petroleum byproducts, They are, petroleum is not only connected with fuel. There are other byproducts which fill our industries, and there are industries which entirely depend on them.
Yeah, so the most acute impact I have tracked is on helium, and helium is used in MRI scanners, and approximately about 50,000 units worldwide require regular helium refills continuously. And Qatar produced roughly about a third of global helium supply, with production offline and approximately 200 specialized cryogenic containers stranded near the strait, and it's approaching the 35 to 40-day boil-off threshold. So the medical imaging supply chain is under severe pressure. And if you look at the pharmaceutical supply chain, it's also exposed through petrochemical intermediates that flow through the Gulf. And if you look at India, which manufactures a large share of the world's generic medicines, is also, I think, experiencing energy cost pressures from elevated LNG and crude prices. So this, if the disruption extends through Q2 and Q2 maybe Q3, input costs for pharmaceutical manufacturing will also rise meaningfully. And apart from that, look at the fertilizer connection. It, I think, is perhaps the most consequential for India and most Asian countries. Not just India, so many Asian countries. And India invoked the Essential Commodities Act on March 10th to ration gas to fertilizer plants. Urea output could drop to 10 to 15% if disruptions persist. Who knows? And this hits right before the June Kharif monsoon planting season. So think about it, reduced fertilizer application now means reduced crop yields in October or November. So the link from gas field to rice paddy runs through, I think, about 60 days.
60 days? So in a way we can say that this war which is taking place in West Asia has truly acquired a global dimension?
I think so. Yes. So this is actually a foundation of my of the thesis of my work, and the energy dimension is obvious, of course. The semiconductor AI dimension, of course, through helium is now being covered all over, and the food security dimension through fertilizer is hitting South Asia right now as we speak. Because if you take a look at Bangladesh, where 5 of 6 urea plants have already been shut down. This is news, confirmed. And the water security dimension is acute. Just today, an Iranian attack struck a service building at a power and water desalination plant in Kuwait, and it killed an Indian worker, if I'm not mistaken. Check on that. So it caused a significant material damage. And this is the latest official news from Kuwait Ministry of Electricity. And if you look at Kuwait, all these Middle Eastern countries, they depend on water desalination for 90% of their water, drinking water. And also look at the insurance dimension, which has created a self-executing economic blockade that persists after ceasefire. The monetary dimension, which IRGC collecting yuan. I mean, they are collecting yuan denominated tolls at the Hormuz, and it's also creating de-dollarization precedents in real time as we speak. So, and look at President Zelensky. So he's selling counter drone systems to Gulf states while simultaneously striking Russian oil terminals. So this is a very complex scenario. So the unseen dimension that affects India most directly is that this war has compressed the timeline for every global supply chain vulnerability.
Let's shift our focus a bit. Let's talk about Kharg Island. Let's talk about the boots on ground. Do you think it can turn into another Iraq? You know, if there are boots on ground, if the Marines are deployed?
Well, let me be precise on what the evidence and the data shows versus what is speculation. And the evidence is that right now, as of today, the Pentagon has positioned over, I think, about 50,000 troops in the region, in the theater, including 50,000, if I'm not mistaken, including the elements of 82nd Airborne Division, 2 Marine Expeditionary Units with amphibious ships and attack helicopters and special operations forces, including Rangers and SEALs and Marines. And the American Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said publicly that the US can achieve all objectives without ground troops. But he said they can achieve everything without ground troops. But look at the evidence. The theater says everything. And will this become another Iraq? The architecture is designed to prevent that, I think. Iraq was a regime change plus nation building plus long-term occupation. The Karg contingency, the Karg Island, it's a targeted economic pressure operation designed to force concession without occupying the country. Because if you look at it, the Karg Island, it's a tiny island, about 1/3 the size of Manhattan, New York. And it's sitting 25 kilometers off Iranian coast, and it handles 90% of Iran's crude oil exports. Seizing or blocking that would collapse 90% or more of Iran's oil revenue. Think of that.
Absolutely. But, one thing also becomes clear that, for the first time, American military armada and its ability to engage in an asymmetric warfare is also being questioned. I mean to say, we don't find the aircraft carriers in action. We haven't seen, their weaponry in action, the way they deployed and tried to impress the world in the first Iraq war and in the second Iraq war and in the Afghan wars, the way they demonstrated their weaponry in Tora Bora. Nothing of that sort has happened. Do you think that this asymmetric warfare has, one, taken Americans by surprise? And secondly, is the system becoming archaic in nature? Or wrong systems are there?
Yeah, so and if you look at the whole question, and even the E3 Sentry aircraft was damaged in Prince Sultan Air Base, and if you look at that and the attack involving at least 1 ballistic missile and several drones and wounded between 10 to 15 American service members, I think America is being very careful, and because it's very very sensitive. And I think they're calculating the best possible outcome with the least possible deployment. And is the American system archaic? That is too broad a claim, I think. So what is true is that the 1970s, this, I mean, they're having, if you look at this the E3 Sentry aircraft specifically, that's a big blow, I think, because that is one of the aircrafts which, when it's airborne, it scans miles and miles, kilometers and kilometers, and it can scans all the radar, it scans all the drones, ballistic missiles, jets, everything, and it basically gives everything, all the information to the American and Israeli jets. So it handles everything. So having that gone is a huge blow as well. And the broader lesson is asymmetric warfare, and it has reached a level of sophistication where cheap drones and missiles can destroy platforms worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And Iran is in real time demonstrating at scale what Ukraine has been demonstrating against Russia. So the era of assuming expensive platforms are safe on the ground is over, I think.
You're saying this is a molecular choke point. 5 manufacturers, a 2,000 day queue, and zero search capacity. Can you break it down for our viewers?
What happens is, in Qatar and Iran, they share the same geology, where the LNG processing in Qatar, they share the same geology with Iran. So the North Dome and South Pass. So that's what we have to understand. The 7 industries, one processing hub, one geological formation beneath the seabed. And so this is the part which nobody, I think, understands until the missiles flew. All of it depends on a specialized piece of cryogenic equipment manufactured by only 5 companies on Earth. And every order books in full through 2028. That means if now two LNG trains are damaged in Qatar. And even if it's not a matter of money anymore, so even if Qatar wants to repair it, let's say immediately, they can't get it repaired because these 5 companies who are able to repair and get it done, these cryogenic equipment manufacturers, where there are only 5 companies on Earth, their order books are full through 2028. Just imagine. So when you destroy the processing hub, all 7 industries fall and fail simultaneously. So no financial model ever connected these dependencies. So the market priced each independently. So this is the big miss. So Iran strikes, destroyed 2 of Qatar's 14 LNG trains at Lashafan, and I think it removes about 12.8 million tons per year, if I'm not mistaken, and that's roughly about 17% of Qatar's capacity. So if you look at the statement from Qatar Energy's CEO, they said the repairs will take 3 to 5 years, and that is not hedging. The specialized cryogenic heat exchangers required are manufactured by only 5 companies. So the remaining 12 trains, which are physically undamaged, are also offline. That's what we have to understand. So not because of reservoir damage from the shared geology, but because of the 3 separate factors. The Ras Laffan complex was evacuated after the strikes, and the Strait of Hormuz is commercially closed due to insurance withdrawal, and the restart sequence is idled, and the LNG trains require weeks of careful restarting, even under, I think, ideal conditions. If you look at, again, the normalization scenarios, as I said, the best case scenario would be a ceasefire, hopefully by April or May, with almost reopening at least slightly, and undamaged trains restart over 4 to 6 weeks. And but with these 2 destroyed trains the 2 destroyed LNG trains, they remain offline until 2029 at earliest.
And before we close the interview, the direct impact of this war on Russia and China, very quickly.
Yes, Russia, I think, is the most interesting case because its position has almost flipped dramatically in the last week. So Russia entered this war as its greatest financial beneficiary. Urals crude surged from about 52 per barrel to nearly 99 delivered in India, and export earnings jumped 20% above February averages. And Carnegie's Alexander, I think, noted Russia was heading towards a genuine budget crisis before the war. And the Gulf conflict bought time. So then the Ukraine broke the loop between March 23rd and 27th. Ukrainian drones struck Russia's two largest Baltic oil export terminals, if you remember, Primorsk and Ust-Luga, 3 times in 5 days. So KRIA, the Finnish Energy Research Institute, they confirmed neither port loaded oil for 5 consecutive days. So Reuters also calculated about 40 to 50% of Russia's crude export capacity went offline. So the most severe disruption in modern Russian history is that. So Russia is now recomposing a gasoline export ban, and the war that was enriching Moscow created the strategic logic for Kiev to ensure Moscow could not collect the windfall. So Russia is also reportedly supplying Iran with upgraded drones, with enhanced tech, anti-jamming capabilities, creating a feedback loop where Russian technology sustains Iranian resistance, and which sustains the Hormuz closure, which was supposed to sustain the Russian oil windfalls until Ukraine destroyed the terminals. So China, if you look at China, China is very important as well. So China is playing a more cautious strategic game. China controls the alternative payment architecture. So there's something called the mBridge, the CBDC platform process, which processed about 387 billion renminbi. And that's approximately about 55 billion in March 2026 alone, with 95% of transaction in digital yuan. So CIPS, SIPS, China's alternative to SWIFT network. Okay. So it prints about 24.7 trillion.
Absolutely. I think you have summed it up very well, and I think I've really fallen short of time. So thank you so much for joining me from Melbourne, and we will be in touch. Thank you, Shanaka. Thank you so much. So this is all I had on Point tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you and good night.
हमें स्वस्थ रखने वाली सारी चीजें ज्यादातर शुद्ध होनी चाहिए। सूर्य की किरणें और स्वच्छ पानी, वैसा ही है लाइन अरेबियन डेट्स। और अब लाइना डेट्स, इसमें फाइबर्स और विटामिन्स भी कुदरती हैं, जो देता है स्वास्थ्य भी कुदरती।
लाइना प्रीमियम डेट्स।